Snow crunched beneath my boots as I tried to shake the numbness from my fingers. It was Christmas Eve. The house glowed warm with twinkling lights, but I wasn't inside. My own family had slammed the door in my face. "Consider it training for the nursing home." My daughter-in-law's voice rang from the other side of the door, followed by the laughter of my son and even my grandchildren, their giggles echoing like knives. They thought it was funny to leave me standing outside in the bitter December night, clutching the scarf my late husband had given me 30 years ago. I knocked once, twice, then harder. My son's shadow passed across the frosted window. He smirked, raised his glass, and mouthed the word, "useless." Then he turned back to the warmth of the table, where plates of ham and mashed potatoes steamed, where laughter rose above the carols playing from the radio. My place at the table sat empty, and I realized it wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. The wind howled. My body shook. Each minute outside stripped another layer of my dignity, but inside, something else stirred something stronger than the cold. I remembered every sacrifice I had made for that boy, how I sold my wedding ring to pay for his college textbooks, how I worked night shifts so he wouldn't go hungry, how I carried him through the flu when his father had already passed. And now? I was the punchline of his cruel joke, his test subject for training. I shuffled to the porch swing, my legs barely carrying me, and sat on the frozen wood. My breaths came out in sharp clouds. Through the glass, I could see them raise a toast. My daughter-in-law tossed her hair back dramatically, then made a mocking face, pretending to shiver as the kids burst into laughter. They were imitating me. Their Christmas game was my humiliation. The longer I sat, the less the cold mattered. What burned hotter than frostbite was the truth. I had been blind. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as dead weight, an inconvenience, a wallet. And if they already had me standing outside like trash, what would stop them from shoving me into a home and stripping away everything I had left? But I didn't crumble. I didn't beg. I stayed silent, hidden by the shadows, memorizing every word, every smirk, every toast, 'cause I wasn't going to let this Christmas end with me frozen outside their window. No, this Christmas would end with them learning exactly who built that house, who paid for those meals, who signed their very survival into existence. By the time the clock struck midnight, my fingers were stiff, my lips numb, but my mind was sharper than ever. They thought I was powerless. They thought age had made me weak. But by morning, they were going to understand the weight of my silence. And when the lights flickered off inside and their laughter finally died down into drunken snores, I rose from that frozen porch swing and smiled to myself. The revenge that waited for morning would leave them colder than I ever was. When I woke, it wasn't in my bed. My neck ached from the porch swing, my knees stiff from the cold. My coat was frozen stiff, my scarf stiffened with frost. Morning light poured weakly across the yard, turning the snow into blinding mirrors. I pushed myself up, my bones protesting, and steadied on the railing. The sound of laughter floated through the front door again. Inside, I could hear the squeals of children opening presents, the tearing of wrapping paper, and the shrill voice of my daughter-in-law bragging about how she'd scored the best deal on those gadgets. I pressed my hand against the window, trying to feel even a thread of warmth, but all I felt was the sting of betrayal seeping deeper than the cold ever could. I wasn't invited in for breakfast. No one opened the door to check if I'd survived the night. My son strolled past the window in his robe, coffee steaming in one hand, his other hand resting on his wife's back as they kissed and laughed. He saw me. For a flicker of a second, our eyes met. Then, he pulled the curtain shut without a word. That was the moment the final string inside me snapped. They weren't just cruel, they were comfortable in their cruelty. They didn't regret it. They didn't think twice. They enjoyed it. I made my way around the back of the house, each step crunching in the snow, and stared at the garage. My garage. The one I had helped my husband build with our own hands before my son was even born. The smell of oil and cedar still clung to the walls when I opened it with the old key I never returned. Inside, stacked neatly on shelves, were boxes of things they never knew I kept. Deeds, contracts, receipts, names, things they thought had been lost to time, but I had guarded like armor. I sat on the workbench, my body trembling not from the cold now, but from fury, and I thought about the irony. My son had locked me out of a house I had bought with my husband's savings. My daughter-in-law had mocked me as training for the nursing home while standing beneath the roof I once fought to save from foreclosure. They thought I was powerless, forgotten, shoved aside, but the truth was buried in every corner of that house, and I was the only one who held the keys to it. When the family finally left the house later that morning, arms loaded with shopping bags piling into the car for their Boxing Day sales trip, I watched from the shadows. Their voices carried, "Mom looks ridiculous. She'll croak soon anyway. Maybe we should just clear her room out and turn it into a game space." Their laughter rang out until the car engine roared and they sped down the road. That's when I stepped out of the garage and into my home. My home. The warmth wrapped around me like a cruel reminder of what they had denied me. The scent of cinnamon rolls lingered in the air. Wrapping paper littered the floor. The tree glittered proudly with ornaments, many of which were mine, stolen from my boxes when I moved in. My old glass angel sat crooked at the top, its cracked wing glowing under cheap fairy lights. I walked slowly through each room, fingers trailing across surfaces I once polished, frames I once hung, furniture I once paid for. Every corner whispered of me, yet they had tried to erase me. And then I saw the stockings, hung by the fireplace, 5 of them in a neat row. My son's, my daughter-in-law's, my grandchildren's, and even the dog's. But not mine. Instead, on the floor beneath them sat the dog bowl, filled with scraps. A note leaned against it. "Merry Christmas, Grandma." I sank onto the couch, staring at it, the sting spreading across my chest. The humiliation wasn't accidental, it was deliberate, crafted to break me. But it didn't. It lit me. By the time they returned home, arms loaded with more things they didn't need, they would never imagine the fire that waited inside. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to let the truth speak for itself, the truth they never expected me to carry. Because while they laughed at me, while they mocked me, while they locked me outside to freeze, I was sitting on something far colder, far sharper than their cruelty, something that, by morning, would turn their laughter into screams. And as I stood before the fireplace, staring at their stockings, I already knew exactly how I'd start. When they pulled back into the driveway that evening, bags in hand, laughter spilling out of their mouths like poison, I was already inside, sitting calmly at the head of the dining table they thought belonged to them. My son froze first when he saw me. My daughter-in-law dropped her shopping bag, the expensive shoes tumbling onto the floor. "How the hell did you get in here?" my son barked, his voice sharp with panic. I didn't answer. I simply gestured toward the fireplace. There, where their stockings once hung, every single one had been replaced. Instead of names stitched neatly on red fabric, I'd hung manila envelopes dangling in place like warnings. Their laughter died instantly. "What is this?" my daughter-in-law hissed, stepping forward, snatching one down and opening it. Her face blanched. Inside were photocopies documents, bills, photographs, all with her signature sprawled across unpaid loans, debts she thought no one knew about. My son reached for his, ripping it open. His hands trembled as he pulled out the contract's proof of how I had paid off the mortgage on this house years ago, how I had co-signed the car he drove, how everything he had bragged about earning had my fingerprints hidden in the fine print. "You didn't think I kept records?" I said quietly, my voice steady, almost gentle. "You thought your cruelty buried me, but I've carried every receipt, every signature, every deed you've ever tried to erase." My grandchildren peeked nervously from behind the couch, eyes wide, sensing something was collapsing. My son's face turned scarlet. "You can't. This doesn't mean—" Oh, it means everything, I cut in. Because all of this? I spread my hands toward the walls, the furniture, the glowing tree. It was mine before you ever opened your mouths to spit on me, and tonight you'll taste what it's like to lose. I rose slowly, my joints aching but my spirit burning. From the pocket of my coat, I pulled a single lighter. Their eyes widened. The envelopes weren't the only things I had prepared. On the table sat a metal box filled with matches and kindling I had dragged from the garage, the very garage my son mocked me for clinging to. My daughter-in-law gasped. You wouldn't? Wouldn't I? I asked, my eyes locking on hers. You locked me outside in the cold to die, and you think I wouldn't burn away what you love most? I flicked the lighter once, just enough to let the flame dance in the dimness. The panic rippled instantly through them. My son lurched forward, but I snapped the lid of the box shut with a clang. The sound echoed like a gavel. You've treated me like nothing, but I am the foundation of this family. You laughed at the thought of me being trained for a nursing home. Now you'll crawl before me, or everything you own turns to ash. For the first time, silence ruled. No laughter, no smirks, just the sound of their breathing, heavy and uneven. My daughter-in-law clutched her children's arms, pulling them close, her bravado crumbling. My son sank into a chair, his face pale, his pride cracked open. Please, he whispered, voice breaking. Don't. Beg louder, I said, my hand steady on the lighter. Make sure your children hear how the mighty man begs the mother he called useless. He broke. His shoulders hunched, his voice cracked, and he pleaded, the sound of desperation spilling across the table like spilled wine. His wife followed, choking on apologies, promising to change, to treat me differently, to never mock me again. I let the lighter snap closed, the flame gone, but I didn't move. I let them stew in their fear, their humiliation. I let their children watch their strong, proud parents bend into pitiful shapes before the old woman they had tried to bury. Finally, I leaned down, close enough for them to hear every syllable. You thought the cold would kill me, but it only froze my heart long enough to remember everything you've done, and now you'll live every day with the memory that mercy was the only gift I gave you this Christmas. I left them trembling in the house they once thought was theirs, their stockings of shame still dangling by the fire, and as I stepped outside into the night, the cold air no longer stung. For the first time in years, it felt clean. By morning, they were not just humbled. They were ruined inside their own home, stripped of their pride, their comfort, and their power, and I was finally warm. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.